Akala ko, hindi nyo na ako titilian.
Anyone who knows Philippine politics knows that the powerful nation of 100 million people is passionate about holding elections. Last May 2016, in what experts have described as the most electrifying, fiercely challenged, acrimonious, and politically significant election contest since the Marcos regime was overthrown in 1986, more than 55 million Filipinos voted. At stake were national posts such as the presidency and vice presidency and membership in the bicameral legislature, as well as local city and gubernatorial positions. As usual, elections in the Philippines are about personality over platform.
Magprangkahan tayo. Yung mga tao na yan, pupunta dyan, purposely ba para makinig lang ng issues? I don't think so. Ang mga tao na yan, pupunta dyan para sumaya. Karamihan dyan. Kung mapapatawa yung mga tao dyan, gagaan na yung loob sa inyo. Kaysa, hindi yung makikinig. Mag-debate ka na, mag-presenta ka ng plataforma.
Nang nabasa ko yung EIE condemnation sa akin, sabihin ko sa kanila, fuck you. France, Britain. Tapos yung EIE ngayon, tas the goal to condemn me. As again, I repeat it, fuck you.
The polls of Asia's oldest democracy were, as expected, dominated by political dynasties and members of the nation's elite, with one glaring exception. The polls of Asia's oldest democracy were, as expected, dominated by political dynasties and members of the nation's elite, with one glaring exception. In less than a day after the official end of the voting, Rodrigo Duterte, the Maverick town's mayor, and the political firebrand secured a massive win with nearly 40% of popular vote in the presidential elections.
I will kill you.
I would kill all you making the life of the Filipino miserable.
Hitler massacred 3 million Jews. Now, there's a 3 million drug addicts. There are. I'd be happy to slaughter them.
You are free to kill the idiots.
Are you a registered voter?
Yes.
Yes, I am a registered voter.
I am a registered voter.
Registered voter.
I am a registered voter.
I'm a registered voter.
I am a registered voter.
I am a registered voter.
Yes, I am a registered voter.
I am a registered voter here in our municipality and particularly at Barangay Santo Tomas, Camaligan.
I am a registered voter of our municipality, Camaligan.
I am registered voter.
I am a registered voter.
Yes, I am a registered voter.
To know more about elections, let us first define what suffrage is. Suffrage simply means the right to vote or elect public officials to represent us in the government and propose legislation. Fun fact: did you know that the right to vote is not a natural right, but a right created by law? Because the right to vote is only given to us by the Constitution and not upon birth. And not in all countries, people are allowed to vote because they are not democratic in nature. But the Philippines is a democratic and republican country. That's why people can register and vote for public office.
Tell us about your experience in voting.
Since 1990, during our SK time, so that was the first time na ako nagboto as as a registered voter.
And I remember it was 1979 and I am 18 years old then when I casted my first vote. My experience during that time in Marcos regime, I am fully aware that something different is being happened during the time of Marcos regime, during the election time. And young at then, I have my courage and I am so long to cast my vote to express my sympathy of what is being happened during that time.
So for me, elections voting is a matter of popularity over what that person can actually do. But as time progresses, I come to realize that leadership is not a matter of popularity. It's not a matter of gaining a lot of people just because you are known, just because your name is colorful, just because people know you. A lot of people knows you. So for me, I have changed in such a way that I have been so critical, a little bit critical in assessing those candidates.
Easy. Voting is quite easy. We have assigned room when we vote, and the staff are very accommodating. And well, you need to prepare yourself whom you will be voting for you to shade the paper fast. I was excited. And when I was done voting, I felt fulfilled, knowing that I voted for people who would best represent me, my beliefs, and my principles.
First, it was kind of tired because of the hot weather and also the long waiting before you can enter the room precinct. But it all became worth it.
And when I was waiting for my turn to vote, I became nervous since it was my first time voting experience.
Actually, my experience in voting was smooth and was good, but sometimes, like every time like there is an election in our respective barangays, there are some, like instead of starting at 6 a.m., they would start like 6:30 or 7 a.m. because they're still having a problem with the diagnostics of how the PCOS machines are being operated.
Now, let us discuss the eligible voters in the Philippines. According to the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 5, Section 1, suffrage may be exercised by all citizens of the Philippines not otherwise disqualified by law, who are at least 18 years of age and who shall have resided in the Philippines for at least 1 year, and in the place wherein they propose to vote for at least 6 months immediately preceding the election. How about those Filipinos who cannot read and write or without properties? Even if a Filipino cannot read and or write and has no property, they are still allowed to vote because voting is a vested right by the Constitution and no other requirements needed. How about the overseas Filipino voter? Republic Act 9189, or the Overseas Absentee Voting Law, entitles all Filipino citizens overseas not otherwise disqualified by law and immigrants and permanent residents with affidavit of intent to resume residence in the Philippines to vote for elective positions on the national level, president, vice president, senators, and party list representatives.
Let's talk about the first requirement in exercising suffrage, citizenship. Citizenship as requirement to suffrage, as taken from Article 4, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution. The qualifications for voter registration should parallel the basic qualifications for voting, which is citizens of the Philippines and at least 18 years of age or over, and residents of the Philippines for 1 year or for at least 6 months in the city or municipality wherein he or she proposes to vote immediately preceding the elections are qualified to vote. These are normally set out in a country constitution, or in a bill or charter of rights. Most countries that aspire to be democracies try to maintain suffrage for all citizens who have reached adulthood, customarily age 18. There may be residence requirements for registration and voting, especially in a system based on separate electoral districts. What are the proofs of Philippine citizenship by election? Philippine birth certificate, old or valid Philippine passport, voter's affidavit or voter's identification card, marriage contract indicating the Philippine citizenship of the applicant.
We got it. This is the stamp, and now I'm a permanent resident of the Philippines. So, yeah.
Who are classified as Philippine citizens? Under the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 4, Section 1, it states that the following are citizens of the Philippines. 1. Those who are citizens of the Philippines at the time of the adoption of this Constitution. 2. Those whose fathers or mothers are citizens of the Philippines. 3. Those born before January 17, 1973, of Filipino mothers who elect Philippine citizenship upon reaching the age of the majority. And 4. Those who are naturalized in accordance of law. What are the modes in acquiring Philippine citizenship? There are two generally recognized forms of acquiring Philippine citizenship. Number 1, Filipino by birth. Under this, there are two kinds of Filipino by birth. First is the jus soli or right of soil, which is a legal principle that a person's nationality at birth is determined by the place of birth. We also have jus sanguinis or the right of blood, which is the legal principle that, at birth, an individual acquires the nationality of his or her natural parents. The Philippine adheres to this principle. The second form is Filipino by naturalization, which is the judicial act of adopting a foreigner and clothing him with the privileges of a native-born citizen. It implies the renunciation of a former nationality and the fact of entrance into a similar relation towards a new body politic. I am a natural-born Filipino who was naturalized in another country. Can I reacquire my Filipino citizenship without losing my current citizenship? Former natural-born Filipino who has been naturalized in another country who wishes to retain or reacquire their Philippine citizenship may apply for retention or reacquisition of Philippine citizenship pursuant to RA 9225. Nice. Can a dual citizen vote in Philippine elections? Yes. A person who reacquires Filipino citizenship may vote in Philippine elections. For example, to cast the vote in Australia, he or she must register as an overseas absentee voter at either the Philippine Consulate in Sydney or the Philippine Embassy in Canberra. To cast the vote in the Philippines, one must register as a voter in the district where he or she intends to vote and establish residency there. Let's tackle the last qualification to exercise suffrage, as taken from Article 5, Section 1 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. A citizen, in order to be qualified to vote, must have resided in the Philippines for at least 1 year and for at least 6 months on the place where he intends to vote immediately preceding the elections. Now, what's the difference between a 1 year or 6 month requirement? The The 1-year residency requirement means permanent residence, while the 6-month residency requirement means either permanent or temporary residence. Since residence can also mean temporary residence, one can vote in either his locality of permanent residence or locality of temporary residence during local or national elections. For example, Pedro is domiciled in Tuguegarao City and is a registered voter therein. But he is working in Manila for more than 6 months already, has established a temporary residence, and is likewise a registered voter there. Under the law, he can vote in Tuguegarao City since he is a permanent resident of the place, or in Manila since he has a temporary residence there. On the other hand, what does a permanent residence or domicile require? It requires bodily presence in the locality, the intention to remain there or animus medendi, and an intention to return to it if one goes somewhere else or animus revertendi. If a new residence is established, permanent residence requires an intention not to return to the old domicile or animus non revertendi. For example, if a Filipino citizen works abroad to look for greener pastures but still has the intention to return to the Philippines, he can still exercise his right to vote since his domicile is still in the Philippines. On the other hand, temporary residence only requires the intention to reside in a fixed place. To be familiar with the needs of the locality, a voter must reside therein for at least 6 months immediately preceding the election. Overseas absentee voting. How do overseas Filipino workers vote? RA 9189, or the Overseas Absentee Voting Law, entitles all Filipino citizens overseas not otherwise disqualified by law and immigrants and permanent residents with affidavit of intent to resume residence in the Philippines to vote for elective positions on the national level, president, vice president, senators, and party list representatives. For a clearer understanding, let's define some terms. Absentee voting, it refers to the process by which qualified citizens of the Philippines abroad exercise their right to vote. While the certified list of overseas absentee voters refers to the list of registered voters, overseas absentee voters whose applications to vote in absentia have been approved by the Commission, said list to be prepared by the Committee on Absentee Voting of the Commission on a country-by-country basis. This list shall be approved by the Commission in an en-banc resolution. Meanwhile, the coverage includes all citizens of the Philippines abroad who are not otherwise disqualified by law, at least 18 years of age on the day of elections, may vote for president, vice president, senators, and party list representatives. Here are some questions people might ask about overseas absentee voting. I already registered as an overseas voter years ago. Do I need to register again? If you have voted in the 2016 and/or 2019 national elections, then you are still registered. However, if you failed to vote in those 2 consecutive elections, then COMELEC would have deactivated your registration record. Do I need to register? Who are qualified to register for overseas absentee voting? All those qualified to register for overseas absentee voting are encouraged to do so. You are qualified to register for overseas absentee voting if you are a Filipino citizen who, on the day of the election, are 1. Abroad, 2. Will be abroad, 3. At least 18 years of age, 4. Not otherwise disqualified by law to vote. As an example, those who have lost their Filipino citizenship, renounced their Filipino citizenship, convicted by final judgment of an offense punishable by not less than 1 year imprisonment, including those found guilty of disloyalty, rebellion, insurrection, violation of firearms law, and crimes against national security, and those declared by a competent authority as insane or incompetent. 5. Dual citizens, or those who have reacquired or retained their Philippine citizenship under the Citizenship Retention and Reacquisition Act of 2003. 6th, immigrant or permanent resident of the country in which the embassy or consulate where he or she will cast his or her vote on election day is located. And 7th, seafarers may also file their application personally at any post or at any designated registration centers in the Philippines. When can I file my application for overseas absentee voting? The application for overseas absentee voting will start on December 16, 2019 to September 30, 2021. There will be no registration during Philippine holidays unless otherwise announced by the embassy.
Why is it that important to vote? So it as a citizen or Filipino citizen rather, we are having our rights to vote, or the so-called suffrage.
Voting brings an impactful change. It is through this act that we fulfill our civic and political engagement.
And I am urging anyone, and I am hoping that we can have another kind of leader who can lead our nation with heart, because we are experiencing a kind of administration today which is so different. And then to the young fellows now, young voters, those who are not yet registered, kindly please come out, register now, and cast your vote, and express your right to choose a good leader to lead our nation comes 2022. Thank you so much.
It is important to vote because, first, if you have to exercise your right to vote, right to choose the right people in position who thinks for the rest of our country and not for his or her own interests.
So I believe that it is very, very important not just to vote, but to vote wisely for the right people, because they're the ones who will be given the mandate. With that mandate comes the power to amplify our voice, the power to fight for our rights. So we all must vote wisely. But for us to be able to do that, we must first register to vote.
In the right leaders, everything will just follow. The order, the peace, good project, no substandard project.
As we've learned about suffrage and its importance, it is now the time to exercise our right and duty as citizens of the country and choose wise leaders who will lead our nation to betterment. Because if we want to change, then we should act too.
Puso nyo na ang totamor. Di na palo